ahead and get started.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Angie Burton, and I am the Youth Programs Manager for the Ability Center. I work in the rural four-county area of Defiance, Fulton, Henry, and Williams counties. Today, before we get started, I just wanted to give you some basic information. We do have an interpreter. Her name is Kate, and she is available right now. We also have closed captioning available. It's down at the bottom of your screen if you are needing that service. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that this is a webinar, and so we are set up to where you can see the presenters, but we cannot see you. So if you have any questions during the course of our presentation, please use the Q&A box, which is also at the bottom of your screen. And we will answer any questions at the end of the seminar. I guess with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
All right, thanks everyone for being here with us. My name is Sarah Heldman, and I am the Youth Recreation Coordinator at the Ability Center. And I have the privilege of introducing our panelists today. So this month, the month of August, we've been focusing our webinars on back to school. So if you've missed some of our previous webinars, they're available on our website as well as Facebook if you'd like to go back and watch them. You know, the core of our service is always helping individuals with disabilities to be as independent as possible. And in the youth department, we can't do that without partnering with families. So we wanted to give some parents that we've had the opportunity to work with the opportunity to share their experiences, and especially as we head back into the school season, that they can share their experiences with us. So I'll have each one, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself, maybe just sharing a little bit about your family and information that you'd like to share with us about your child with a disability. So we'll kind of go in chronological age order by kiddos, if that's okay with you guys. So we'd go Lindsay, Heather, and then end up with Wendy.
Sure. My name is Lindsay Meldon. My husband Sam and I live with our 3 daughters in West Toledo. And my youngest daughter, Jo, is 4, and she was born with spina bifida, so she uses a wheelchair full time. And she started in Help Me Grow, and then last year we aged out of Help Me Grow and into our public school system. So she's been in the school system about 1.5 years, I would say. Yeah. Any other information you want to know? That's good. Happy to be here.
I think that's good. Thank you. Heather?
Okay. I'm Heather Horzuski. My husband Scott and we have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And my oldest son, Gavin, is, he's a senior this year. He's out, well, we're actually Evergreen, but he's out at 4-County Career Center it's called the SMART program, which is like pre-engineering. I was trying to think, I've like totally drawn, what else to say? He has high functioning autism and ADHD. He was diagnosed with ADHD at 8 and autism at, I think it was about 14. So it was kind of like later on. And that's all I can really think of right now. Do you have any other questions or?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
And Wendy?
Hi there, everybody. My name is Wendy Smenner. My husband and I live in Springfield Township. I have 2 boys. My oldest is 22 and my youngest is 20. Connor, my younger son, he was born prematurely and diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 18 months. He attended Springfield public schools until he was out of middle school, and then attended privately for high school. And currently he is a junior at Bowling Green State University. He lived on campus for 2 years in the dorm, and then just recently he moved into an apartment near BG at the end of June. And he's participated in many programs at the Ability Center. He's done the Next Steps program and done a lot of different kind of, he did an intern there, and also just was a presenter on a lot of different panels at the Ability Center also. He's majoring in communications.
Yeah, thank you. We're happy to have different age groups and different geographical regions represented. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so to get started, I'm just curious, and I don't know if we'll follow the same protocol that Sarah started, where we can start from youngest to oldest, but it seems like it'll work. But what are some strategies your family has or will implement to be able, or to be successful with back to school transitions? And it sounds like for a couple of you, it's already started, and for others, you're still anticipating. So Lindsay, we'll start with you.
Sure. I would say in the last year, we'll start with last year's transition because it was more traditional. A lot of it felt like very dependent on her IEP goals. And so because it was her very first year into the school system, there was a lot of anxiety around like separation, which I'm sure a lot of your older children, that's not part of your transition process. So that was kind of our main thing, was like getting the IEP set up because it was her very first one. And then transitioning her into that separating from me for multiple hours of the day. So this year it's obviously going to look a little bit different. Our IEP is set up in like November, so we don't really have to readdress that for a couple more months. And the transition is going to be pretty low key, I think. We don't have all the details yet of how school is going to start, but it's going to be remote at this point. So it will be connecting with her teacher one-on-one, and then eventually figuring out the therapist schedules, connecting with them one-on-one, and then eventually doing like Zoom classes. It'll be a little weird for preschool, I think, but yeah, and I'm hoping that maybe they can get creative, because a few parents were reaching out about like having like a meeting on like a grassy lawn by the school for like a story time or something. I don't know if that's really in the realm of possibility, but last year she was just excited even for 15 or 20 minutes to like see her friends' faces and the teacher. So that's probably what the transition will look like this year.
Okay. Heather?
Okay, so like, yeah, last year was also like a new transition because he came out of his regular high school and went into Ford County. So I would kind of say the same thing, where they kind of based it off of his IEP goals, but then like things would happen and they go, oh, and he would, like if he got overwhelmed, he would tend to like hide in a certain place, so they would have to go find him, which is not great. So we kind of worked on that, saying, you know, that is not okay, you know, no matter what, and it's not safe, and he needs to go see what's called his VOC. She's his like IEP, what do you call it, liaison. So they would give him like a break after he would be at what's called lab for the morning, and then he would, like at the end of the lab, he would go down and just sit in her room and like watch. He likes to watch like videos or read a book or listen to music, and then at that point he would go to lunch, and then he'd like restart fresh. So this year it switches. He has like morning classes because he's a senior, and the seniors go in the afternoon to their labs. Like in the morning he has his second period is called academic assist, but he has to do a recovery math class. So like that would have kind of gave him a break, but now he's got to do the recovery. But as soon as he finishes that, which could be like in a month, he can go back to that academic assist. And then in the afternoon, his VOC already set it up with the new teacher, where at the end of his lab day, he goes down there for like 15 minutes, and he gets to like regroup and be ready to like pretty much go home at that point. But like beforehand, I tend to try it. Like I got with his VOC this like about a week before, and asked her to, like, he has a new instructor, brand new, just knows whatever the previous instructor told him. So it's like, I asked her, can you kind of give him a heads up on how Gavin kind of works, or what he might, you know, need to help him get through the day. Let's see. So we did that, and then we have to go in and get his schedule. So when we would go in and get his schedule, we walk around the building to each class so he knows where to go. But I mean, this year he kind of knew where to go, so it wasn't like we really had to do it. But he still wanted to go, be familiar. One thing we did implement when he got into middle school, actually the middle school for 6th graders, they wanted him to have like a 2-inch binder where it had like a divider pockets for each subject, and then a pencil pouch with their stuff. So we kept that so he's more organized. So he has the divider pockets help because then he can keep his notes. He's not just putting them in his locker or throwing them away on accident. He has pencils, calculator, anything he pretty much needs in there. So that still helps throughout high school. And I feel like that's pretty much it for now.
I would say, yeah, I would say with my son Connor that, like, since he's been in college, and he's kind of really struggled since last March when everything kind of went virtual and all the classes kind of changed from being in person, because he's more of a, you know, face-to-face kiddo, loves the direct instruction, those types of things, loves the, you know, the dialect between teachers and students and stuff. So even though he has some of that still with Zoom and stuff, it was really hard for him to adapt to that, and you know, doing everything on his laptop as far as you know, all his classwork, submitting assignments and stuff like that. He's adapted pretty well. I think at the start of every school year for him, he has to make sure that he receives accommodations still at Bowling Green. So he has a scribe. He gets a note taker for his classes because he can't write independently. And then he gets like extended time on his exams and quizzes. Not so much for assignments or anything like that, but so he has to make sure that he emails and touches base with his professors, you know, usually a week before, you know, school starts, and just kind of make sure that, you know, they are aware of his accommodations and that there needs to be a note taker, and you know, the teacher has to, you know, find a student that is, you know, willing to take notes for him, and then send them to him weekly or daily. And then we also make sure that he can, his classrooms in the buildings that he has to go to, that they're accessible. You know, sometimes we'll get to, when he first started when he was a freshman, you know, 2 weeks before classes would start, we'd kind of just go into every building as classes were in, make sure the elevators were wide enough, make sure that, you know, he could get into the classroom. There was enough room for him because he doesn't usually really sit at a desk. So make sure there's enough room for him, you know, a spot in the classroom with his chair, his power wheelchair and whatnot. So, and if there wasn't, you know, there was a conflict or maybe the doorway wasn't wide enough, or he couldn't access the door to get into the classroom, then, you know, he would have to notify the accessibility office and just kind of let them know, and they would do some advising on re-advising on his schedule and whatnot. So that's always a struggle to start with, but now since he's been a junior, he's kind of, there's not too many classrooms and buildings he hasn't been in yet. So he's pretty good with that. The new thing for him this year, I think, is the transit, because he doesn't live in a dorm. So he's working on that. He is happy that things are pretty much online, because he doesn't have to really utilize transit because he doesn't like to. He's taking 5 classes, and 3 of them are all online, and then 2 of them are hybrid, where he meets only 1 day a week for the class, and then the other day of the week, the other half of the class meets. So He only needs transit twice, so but he's catching on to that, scheduling his own transit pickups and drop-offs and stuff like that. It's just another added thing to his to-do list. So he's managing well though.
Well, thank you all for sharing those experiences. Some of this next question we've already touched on a little bit, but are there supports you're receiving from the schools, and maybe how has that shifted a little bit since March?
Yeah, she, according to her IEP goals, has supports in different therapy modalities. So she sees everybody. She sees PT, OT, and speech. It's hard to answer this question only because I don't know yet what that's going to look like. In March, it looked like once a week she had a Zoom call with all of her therapists at one time, which wasn't really ideal because she got very overwhelmed by seeing 3 or 4 faces staring at her on the screen. She kind of always clammed up, and it would take us half the session just to get her to like warm up to everybody and actually want to talk to them. She recognized them and would say like, "Oh, hi, miss so-and-so," but then she wouldn't want to like actually do the speech practice or answer questions that they were trying to get her to say. So I'm hoping that it's one-on-one this year. And I'm hoping that there might even be an option or eventually be an option to see them one-on-one in person, or like an itinerant, coming to our house or something. I just don't have all of the details yet. Yeah, so I think that those are probably the 3 biggest supports that I would say that she received since starting preschool.
With Gavin, he has his IEP. In his IEP, it's where he can get his breaks. But it was like where he was taking too long of breaks. They were getting him too long. So they had to like cut that back, which I think is, they were getting him like almost an hour. It's like, that's way too long. So it's like, now he's down to 15. I feel that's like plenty enough time. He's allowed to go to his BOCE if he has an issue. Or like the guidance counselor, but he likes his VOCE, so he'll go talk to her. But he's very stubborn, so he tries to think where he can fix a lot of things himself, and that's not the thing. And then it's just constantly trying to figure out what will aha moment work with him to go, okay, I will go. But he, I think, communicates with her pretty well. We're starting to work with OOD a little bit. I'm not really sure how that's going too much on it, but like in his IEP, when the whole pandemic started, he would, his BOCE would have a like meeting hours with the kids. So they would like Zoom her and she would ask how they're doing, if there's any issues. And then like his regular teachers would ask the kids to Zoom with them like once or twice a week. They'd have hours, and he would Zoom with them, which I think was kind of different for him because he's not used to like going up to them and talking to them. And then like with Zoom, it's like face to face, like one-on-one. So that was like, but he actually did much better grade wise in the Zoom than he did at school, because I feel like at school there's like people and just everything is going around so much to like try to take care of. So actually Zoom worked better for him. But I think like a lot of kids are missing that interaction with their friends, just with people in general, their routine. And I asked him that this morning, like that your routine's back in place. And he was like, yeah, besides having to wear that mask all day, but he does it, like he hasn't really complained. But with that, I also, before they started school, I would have him wear it like for half hour, move it up every day. Then one day he was wearing it for 3 hours at a time, just so he could get used to wearing it. So that might be a suggestion. Some people, if their kids haven't started yet and they're going too soon, would have them either set a timer, put it on, and see how long you can last with it, doing your regular routines. But sorry, I'm getting off track a little bit. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Like the IEP is in place, and we're working with OOD a little bit. So that's it.
I'll kind of go backwards a little bit. When my son Connor was in high school and grade school, on his IEP, his accommodations were he had extended time on his tests and quizzes. He had a one-on-one aide that would help him pretty much throughout the whole day with, you know, restroom breaks, those types of things, getting things in and out of his backpack, and scribing for him, helping with a few, you know, things with his iPad and whatnot that he had. Let's see what else he had. And I mean, she was pretty much just solely for him. We were very fortunate that he had the same aide all through, well, pretty much middle school and high school. So that made it where he developed a really good relationship with her and was able to express his needs and wants pretty well. He is, as he kind of got through high school and whatnot, he kind of developed those skills on his own where, you know, he was pretty good at, you know, letting teachers know and staff know what he needed, you know, for his accommodations and what he needed to be successful as a student. As far as now, since he transferred, you know, he's been in college now, his accommodations pretty much now are just the scribe in the extended time on his tests and quizzes. He doesn't, you know, when he attends the classroom, he's just there as a body and an ear. He doesn't really take any thing with him but himself. So it's just easier that way because pretty much everything is emailed or it's online, you know, with the university for the tools that he needs as far as assignments. And that's not just stating just for him, it's like that pretty much for most of the students that attend at Bowling Green, that they have access to, you know, assignments in their books, and it's all kind of done on the computer. We did connect with OOD, Ohioans for Opportunities with Disabilities, just after he graduated from high school, because we knew that he was going to need some personal care assistance while living on campus, because he decided that it wasn't functional for him to be transported daily for, you know, back and forth to Bowling Green, even though it's semi-close to Toledo. It just wasn't functionable. So that's how we decided that he was going to live on campus. And plus he wanted to just to experience the whole, you know, college life and whatnot. And he's happy he did that. He doesn't like to be at home anymore. So, I mean, I think that's typical for college students, but we connected with OOD just because they helped support and give us funding for his college and also for his caretakers. So he has typically he'll have 2 to 3 caretakers that check in with him 3 times a day and help him with pretty much meals and just daily chores around his apartment and his personal hygiene.
Sorry. Thank you guys. I appreciate your input. So the one thing that we strive to assist with here at the Ability Center is helping families overcome obstacles. And so I'm just curious, in your experience, what obstacles have you faced and what resources have you come across that have helped you overcome the obstacles, or what do you think is missing that would be helpful to overcome some obstacles?
Well, I would say the most obvious challenge that we faced when Jo first started at her preschool was the preschool meets in a very old building, and because she uses a wheelchair, there were different elements of the building that were inaccessible to her when she first started. So for example, they didn't have a ramp, an accessible entrance on the preschool side of the building. Like the building itself did technically have a ramp, but it was completely on the opposite side. And it was also, they didn't have an accessible like fire escape because her classroom was at the opposite side of the building. So that was one of the first things that we asked for and received pretty quickly once we started. And then in a smaller way, there are just parts of the building, like inside, like in her classroom, she couldn't access the sink. So they had to use like hand sanitizer and wipes for snack time. So those are like smaller things. And then the playground was completely inaccessible to her. They have like a paved area that's the playground, but the playground itself, like the structure was set up with railroad ties, and then within the railroad ties was mulch. So for a wheelchair, for a lot of reasons, even if they took the railroad ties out, she couldn't navigate the mulch, and then she couldn't actually get onto the structure itself in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I think that's fairly typical, unfortunately, with lots of elementary schools, is their playgrounds and their buildings, especially if they're older, just are completely inaccessible. So that was kind of our project through the last, I would say, year to almost 18 months, was kind of working on getting the ball rolling on the playground. Because it was also just not super, because it was so old, it wasn't even really age appropriate for the preschool children. So that was something that we were working on, and we actually did work with the Ability Center. Unfortunately, the things really got moving in March and then very quickly stopped moving. So, and I know that all the schools are just in survival mode now. So they're not thinking about their playgrounds. So it's honestly very disappointing, because I thought that this year we were going to be able to really make some changes, and but it is what it is. So my goal is to eventually continue that conversation, and even after she leaves, we'll still be in the district, and so to hopefully get that fixed sooner rather than later. There were kids in that building for at least years before Joe started that I know were in chairs. They had multiple kids each year, so kids have been going without for a while, and so hopefully that's an obstacle that we can overcome for her. I think personally, my biggest source of anxiety right now in terms of like barriers to her success I have a lot of anxiety around the IEP process. And so having advocates or people who, any Zoom meeting that would be about the IEP in general, I would be on board for it. Like just gleaning as much information as I can about it to feel equipped to go into the meeting. Yeah, and then also trying to not just like, you just hear horror stories about IEP meetings. So there's some of that I need to like let go of, but then also just coming into it with as much information as I can, equipped to, get your kid what they need. Our first IEP meeting went well, and I took an advocate. Well, I don't know if it wasn't technically an advocate, a representative from the board of DD, who was our Help Me Grow nurse. So she went with us, and just having that moral support. I think actually even I talked to Wendy on the phone just kind of for some moral support before our meeting. Yeah, so I think that's kind of at this point my biggest source of insecurity, because it just feels like that's the key to getting the supports that you need once school starts.
Okay. I was gonna say, okay, yeah. Like Lindsay said, I still get anxious over IEP meetings. Like in 5th grade is when we all got the ball rolling, because he was just like, I felt it was just like all over the place. He would get in trouble for like just normal stuff, but he's not a normal kid, so he has like social anxiety. He doesn't know how to quite talk to kids, or like saying things or doing things that like us would think that's not, say, appropriate or right. They think he's weird. Why is he doing that? He's just kind of like copying what other people do, but it's not always like the right thing to do. And then he's just we don't know, this is going wrong, or the teacher would handle it wrong. And so he was going to Harbor for therapy, and then now he still goes to, luckily, the same therapist, because she left 1 year from Harbor, and we got stuck with another guy, and then it was like really bad, so we had to go find her at the ZEF Center, and I was like, please don't leave until he's out of high school, because the change is too much. And so it was like starting all over again. But so I had to get a letter together and send it to the principal of the school to get the IEP put in place, because I really felt he needed some kind of help besides what was going on. Nothing was going on. They were treating him as a regular student pretty much, because I feel like that's his kind of where it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because when you look at him, you think that's just a normal everyday person. And like I have told him before, I try to treat you like everybody else. He said, but I'm not like everybody else. So it's like the realization he knows reminds me, well, yeah, you're right. You know, you're not, but they don't look at it that way at school all the time. So it's like that got put in place, but it was like at the end of the year in 5th grade, and then they moved to 6th grade, which is in another building. So then it was a transition to go into middle school, and middle school was okay up until like the end of 8th grade. And then he started getting just like looking at bad stuff on the internet, so that became a problem. And it kind of continued into high school for a while there. So in high school, his IEP person was not, he's still there, but I don't care for how he handled things. And like I still feel like sometimes I'm in the dark, like I don't know. And I had a special ed teacher I let her look over his IEPs and things like that, and she kind of gave me some suggestions on like what question to ask, what kind of like assistance, like what kind of support things are in place for him. And the one year I said, well, what kind of support's in place for Gavin? And they're like, well, he had aid at that time. And they're like, well, he has his aid. And that was the answer I got. So it's like, but that doesn't like elaborate. Maybe he needed more breaks he wasn't getting, and things like that. And just I'm glad he's actually out at Fort County, because he seems to stay more busy, let's say it that way, because in classes he's sitting there, and I think he kind of gets like bored, and then or he wants to do what he wants to do. But me, it's like if you can find an advocate, would be a very good thing. Like Angie and was it Shelby came out to his last IEP meeting because his therapist, she couldn't come, but also they kind of know questions to ask that you might not know what to ask. Like OOD right now is kind of pushing for job placement, and I've asked Gavin how he feels about that, and he tells me he wants to go to college. So I keep telling the person he wants to go to college. I'm not sure why we're pushing the job aspect, which is not, I said it's not a bad thing, you know. I mean, some people go straight to jobs, but he tells me he wants to go to college. So I'm kind of at the point, where do I go for college to get like assistance, maybe to have his IEP follow him, things like that. I kind of am not knowing where to go. So I guess I'm listening to Wendy. Maybe can give me some advice on how to go about who would I like kind of talk to, you know. So yeah, just like in high school was really at the beginning it was rough. It was a lot of meetings. Like they tried to put him in suspension, you know, like in suspension, but he was fine with it since he's not very social. He doesn't know about it, so he's like okay being by himself. But it's kind of like, yeah, he's okay, but then you also feel, should he be with people to get him to try to interact with people, you know. This year, like at the beginning of school, he couldn't find his friend for lunch, so he sat by himself again instead of trying to find people in his smart group. So then I said, well, text your friend, because they go to the same school, and he's going, I'll just find him. This is how he gets, like, I'm going to do it. I was like, you have the ability to text him, you know. So he's like, fine. And he did, and he's in the same lunch, and he's like, I'll find you. So he found one kid actually from his smart lab that he likes to talk to a lot. So now them three sit together. So I'm like, he's happy. I'm happy, you know. as a mom, you feel bad if they're like by themselves. You're like, so that they see that and they go, oh, you know, making mom feel bad. So it's just a lot of obstacles of that, like the constant communication, working over that, finding, like going to the ability centers has helped. He was supposed to be in the summer program, which obviously didn't happen. We just had the Zoom, which was kind of nice. He got to talk to the professor from UT that's in engineering, so that was kind of nice. You got to talk to him a little bit about that, but I guess he gets first dibs if they have it next year, because I want him to be like on his own to see what it's like, you know, to be on his own and to go, oh, like this is things I have to do to start, you know, because I feel he will be able to be independent. Like it might take a little longer, but I feel he'll be able to, like Wendy's son's at college and making his own, you know, transportation appointments. Like that's what I'm hoping for. He can, you know, move on from there. So that's pretty much how
I'm going to interrupt real quickly before Wendy shares her experiences, because as Lindsay and Heather were talking, we've received quite a few Q&As. So just want to address that. The Ability Center is available for information and referral for the IEP process. We also have someone in our youth department that is dedicated to those transition topics. So transition from high school to college or high school to employment. So certainly we can be a place that you call and gather information. We can answer questions, or we can refer you to some of our partner agencies if you need more help or specialized services beyond what we can offer. So we had a couple Q&As as you both were sharing your experiences. I'm going to throw that out there. And Wendy, if you'd be willing to share your experiences, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. I would say when Connor was in like high school and stuff like that, I think that, and still now today, I think the biggest piece that I think I struggled with and he struggled with is just, you know, finding social opportunities, whether it's in school or, you know, outside in the community. It's there's things that are available, but, you know, it's depending on your child's, your child's strengths and needs and whatnot. It's kind of hard to find those in our case. You know, Connor, he always wanted to interact with typical peers, so he struggled with having them be accepting of him and as being in a wheelchair and not looked at as different, you know. So he's really had to try to learn how to, you know, project himself and introduce himself to people, and being the initiative, to him being the first to do that. And so that, you know, his peers see him, that, you know, he's very typical. That his peers and him have a lot in common. And once he kind of starts that conversation and gets that dialogue going, it's, you know, usually his peers are pretty responsive, but, you know, it's something that he struggles with just because, you know, he's always got to be the first person out there to say something or do something to initiate any kind of friendship or anything like that. You know, it's different. Most of his life, he's had adult contact, you know, adult supports, you know, and that type of thing. So it's just something he's learning to familiarize himself with, and it's getting easier. I think, you know, college has really helped, just where he's just constantly in that environment with, you know, college peers and whatnot. So it's getting better. I think another obstacle that we've kind of transitioned through was finding an apartment after he moved out of the dorm. The accessibility and everything at the college has been awesome. The dorm was, you know, very accessible. His room was very accessible. There's just a few minor things. They had to put up a few grab bars and stuff like that when in his dorm. But, you know, we knew we didn't, my husband and I didn't want him to be living on campus in a dorm, you know, all of his college life, because he has the capability of living on his semi-living on his own when he's, you know, out of college and whatnot. So we wanted him to be able to experience living in an apartment and seeing what that was like. So it took us quite a while to find an apartment in the area that was, you know, that was tailored to him and met his needs and whatnot. So it's, I think that's a big struggle. Not even if it's just housing, you know, we always have to kind of plan for things like if we're going to go out somewhere as a family or with he's going out with his friends or something, you know, he always has to call ahead. Is there stairs there? You know, can I get into the dining area? Do you have a patio? You know, those types of things. So it's, you know, it's always, you always have to be one step ahead of everything. And, you know, if there's a lot of places we've gone on vacationing or even just in around town that, you know, he's unable to get into. He's never been, he's never experienced, whether, you know, it's a restaurant or just a community place, you know, so it, you know, just like a playground or something like that, you know, so it's, there's a lot of experiences just for those reasons he wasn't able to partake in, just because, you know, there was nothing there for him to do that was accessible as to his needs. But the apartment was a big thing. So we started searching probably last year, and we found two, and one wasn't going to be vacant when we needed it to be. So the one he's in now is not fully accessible, but our main concern was that the bathroom was accessible and that there was no barriers in the living space. And it's a pretty open floor plan. I would have liked the kitchen to be more accessible, but we managed around that and whatnot. But he does have a roommate. It's one of his best buddies from high school was in there living with him also. But you know, I think moving forward, I think I would like to find, you know, a place that, you know, he's fully functional in the kitchen. So right now it's basically, when he lived in his dorm, he learned how to operate a microwave for the first time. So that was very challenging, but he figured it out. You know, he's on board with that, good with that. So I think moving forward, I think that's what we were just really keen on. You know, obviously we had to find a place that was, there was no common hallway entry to the building itself. It was just, you know, you pull up you go right to your door to enter your apartment. There's no common hallway because most of them had stairs going up to the apartment, going up to another level to apartments, or, you know, stairs going down. So, I mean, that was always an issue where there was a stair just going up to the door of his apartment or something like that. So that was always something that was, you know, a challenge. So the one he has now is just, there's no common hallway or entryway. It's just, he goes right up to his door into his apartment. We did have to find, you know, we had to change out like a door lock and stuff and make a keypad on it because he can't manually or physically, you know, use a key to open a door. It's more like a fob, and he had fobs when he was living on the university also. So and the job, you know, as far as finding a job and stuff, I think that's always a challenge too. He always just says right now that, you know, his job is being a student and trying to be as accessible as he can at that. It's not that he's never had a job before. He's done usually every summer he gets a job somewhere. He's been a camp counselor before. He's done a couple internships over the summer. But as far as employment, he thought when he first moved to Bowling Green that he wanted to find, you know, a job on campus, but it was just so selective as far as, you know, most of the jobs that were posted were with food services or something, and that's really hard for him to do. So, or it was the timing, the day of time that they wanted somebody to work or something was not aligned with his class schedule or something. So that's been kind of a struggle. he does work with the radio station, doing things for them, is part of college credit, and then also as part of experience for his communications major. So he enjoys that, but I think it's just, you know, finding that right spot. You know, it's just it's really hard because he's pretty sufficient, you know, in a job setting, I guess, but it's just finding the right fit, I guess, for him, because it's just he knows he doesn't want to work in an office. He learned that over over the summer, as far as when he participated in an internship. He goes, I am not a cubicle person, Mom, at all. I cannot do it. I'm like, he goes, I learned a lot, but I'm just not a cubicle person. And I said, I get it. It's all right. So, I mean, I think he's had a lot of experiences, I think, which have helped him, you know, grow as an individual and finding out what he wants and doesn't want, as far as, you know, a job. But I think it's a struggle. And I think making, what's really helped him is just making connections with either his professors or other students that are in his major, and just, you know, looking for opportunities and just, you know, promoting himself as an individual, I guess, of what his strengths are. And, you know, once people see that, you know, he's hoping that through his connections that he'll be able to, you know, find a job in some way or form, you know, with all of his connections that he's made and whatnot. He does a lot of, like Bowling Green has a lot of, it's a website, or their career center. They have a lot of information that's, you know, students can have access to find jobs and stuff like that. So they're very helpful there, as far as, you know, directing his career path and where he wants to go and whatnot. And kind of to answer Heather's question a little bit, most like tech colleges or community colleges or universities, they, you know, they have an accessibility office, and I mean, luckily we've never really had any issues where Connor's at now. They, you know, they're all supportive of all of his accommodations that he had on his IEP, except for the aid. But you know, once he left high school, he really didn't need like an educational aid. He didn't really, on his IEP, he didn't have any academic goals. It was more just for his mobility concerns and in his scribe. So, but, you know, they've been very accommodating. They've, you know, he has a scribe, and, you know, there's extended time on specific assignments or tests or quizzes. So I think they're all very acceptable of it, and they're willing to work with students that are coming out of high school for those accommodations and whatnot. So I think it's just key to really hook up with somebody in the accessibility office when you are starting to look for a college or you know, a community or a tech school to go to. So I mean, like I said, we've been very fortunate in that area, and not had any concerns and problems with that. So.
Thank you all for sharing. Those are great experiences, and there's a lot of commonality, even though each of your children are different. There's some commonality there. To kind of wrap us up today, and this will also cover all of the questions that are in the Q&A. What strategies do you all implement, or what are some tips that you would have to successfully advocate for your child? That's what most of the questions in the Q&A are about, and also our last question. And then I would just also add, there's a couple questions in there specifically about the Ability Center services. So for youth consumers, you can call the Ability Center. Our phone number is 419-885-5733. And we can connect you to one of our youth staff and kind of go over those services that would pertain to your individual child. But if you all wouldn't mind sharing just some strategies for advocating as we wrap up our time together.
Sure. I'll start with the IEP. I saw that was one of the questions in the Q&A, what parents' experience was. So I've attended 2 IEP meetings at this point. The very first initial one, like I said, I took our representative from the Board of DD with us, sort of as moral support. And then I had also had a few friends who I knew who had gone through the process that I checked in with a lot the week leading up to it and stuff. My biggest advice that I was also given to me from a friend is just you don't have to sign anything that you don't feel comfortable with. Just don't sign. And you can tell them, I want to take this home and reread it, or I want to take it and discuss it with whoever you have in your corner, or I want to pursue this with the Ability Center or an advocate or whatever. And you don't have to sign in that moment. You can feel pressured sometimes to sign and just get it over with, but you don't have to. So that was kind of the biggest piece of advice that was given to me, and I would just extend that to other parents watching. And then the next year that we had our review, it was a lot easier because we were just kind of addressing what goals has she met, do we need to adjust, and we didn't really need to make too many adjustments. This last IEP meeting that we had, I'm gearing up for her kindergarten IEP. So I'm feeling that's where some of my stress is coming from, because I'm I want her to have a one-to-one aide, which she doesn't have for preschool. And I know that that's usually a point of conflict for schools sometimes, whether the child really needs it, and and just kindergarten, it's a big transition to a full day of school and all of that. So as far as advocating, I can, just from my own experience, last year, the most advocacy that I had to do was around the playground. It felt like a really big deal to me, since preschool, the majority of what you're learning in preschool is through play and so socialization, and she's only there for a couple hours a day, and so one huge chunk of that experience of preschool is completely inaccessible to her. So that was a really big thing for me last year that I was working on, and it included sending lots of emails. It included going to a school board meeting with another parent. So we kind of went together as a team. I would definitely recommend reaching out and finding, and however you can, other parents that you can connect with and have a common goal together. And, obviously strengthen numbers, you're going to be listened to when there's more voices in the room. That was a challenge at our school because the parents were not connected very naturally. So we kind of had to work to find each other and to piece that together. But once we did, it was really super helpful. So that community, we've kind of grown it ourselves, and it's made a big difference. I think they really started listening when they realized there were so many of us coming together. And then we obviously reached out to the Ability Center for extra help, and it's hard to know what's going to happen because we're still in this weird COVID limbo, but I'm really hopeful that between the parent collective and the Ability Center working at it from the advocacy and legal standpoint, that we will hopefully get some real changes happening in the playground department. So that's my experience.
Yeah, with the IEP, definitely is a lot better. Like I suggested, try to find, yeah, the Ability Center would be a good one to call to get advice on what kind of advocate you need to help with the IEP for certain things for your IEP, because everybody their kids are all different. So the IEP is going to be different. But like I said, with the advocate there, or more people in numbers, like Lindsay was saying, it's more helpful because, yeah, at every school you go into, they're all different. IEP, I just call them persons that deal with them, coordinators, I guess you call them. They're all different. They all think differently. They will try to pressure you on certain things you don't feel right. And like the advice, definitely I now take it home and I tell them I'm not signing today. I'm taking it home to look over, because I think sometimes if you feel pressured, or they're telling you so many things, you're trying to process everything. I think you have more time if you take it home and you can look it over and, say, I have questions on this, or bring it to your advocate and go, I'm not understanding this. Maybe you can explain this, because they kind of know more about certain things. Like we've had Gavin in therapy, but I kind of feel like with the same therapist, and it kind of go over the same things. So I liked getting him into the Ability Center because he's a teenager and it's hard to find like therapy. They don't really have groups for teenagers to, like him, to get into, where the Ability Center has their recreational once a month where they can socialize with people that are similar to them, or a little different but similar, which is nice. And then there's the programs to help them start being more independent, like the summer program I feel is a good one that they have there, although he hasn't taken it yet. But and then where they do like skills to pay the bills or how to cook and things like that, I feel those are some good things. And always, like, I always feel like I kind of have to look a step ahead to go to get kind of the ball rolling. Like you, Lindsay, said, didn't you say it took you about a year to get stuff going with the playground? So it's like, yeah, sometimes some of these things take a longer, and it's like, I'm now thinking, okay, he's 17, he's going to be 18, and then he's legally an adult, and I feel like a lot of teenagers in general don't know what they're doing at 18, but to help him more with bigger things, bigger decisions, not so we're kind of looking at the power of attorney or guardianship, but I don't think guardianship with him would make him any independent. It make him more dependent, where I would have to make all those decisions. So I'm supposed to talk to Leah actually at the Ability Center about like alternatives for that, and then that is really all I can think of for me.
Okay, I would say starting from a young age with Connor and his IEPs and whatnot, now this might not be everybody's situation, but in our situation, I always, even when Connor was in preschool, he always attended his own IEP meetings with the whole team and his parents. Whether, he was able to participate or not, he was still able to hear what's going on and whatnot. And we're talking about his needs and strengths and what supports he needs and whatnot in every, specific environment. And I think, that was helpful from the get-go. And I always, whenever I attended his IEP meetings, I always made sure that, the goals and objectives they were setting him up for some type of independence later on. So just as an example, I'll remember now this is just pertaining to Connor and himself. So probably when he was in, started first grade, they were concerned with, him being able to, cut with scissors, and they had some adapted scissors for him to work with, and doing, pencil paper things and whatnot. And I just got to the point, okay, we're not having those goals and objectives anymore on his IEP, because what is it that he's later in life going to need to use scissors for or something? I'm sure there are things, but there's other ways that he can work around than worrying for the next year and a half trying to learn how to use scissors or something, or write a paragraph or whatever. There's technology for that type of thing. So I was backed off on those kind of, if you want to say, elementary or remedial skills, just because they just, I kept trying to always look ahead. Okay, is he really going to have to be able to know how to do this to be successful and independent on his own, or in a job, or out in the community, those types of things. So I always really tried to, pick that apart and really think about each one of those goals and objectives. So, we didn't do that. We started introducing, like, instead of like an OT objective, we started incorporating, him getting familiarized with the keyboard and those types of things, because he's able to, type, not, with a couple fingers on a keyboard. So we kind of started that. you know, my basic thing with the handwriting is I just wanted to have a signature. So we worked on that. Now, granted, not everybody's signature is legible. It's a scribble. His is a scribble, but he can put his pen to the paper and, you know, make something look like a signature. And that's all I cared about, so that he'd be able to sign, you know, documents, his IEP or whatever it might be later in life. So that was just a big thing for me. So we just kind of backed off that, and we tried to really implement just like more IT goals and stuff like that, and having more accommodations with him being able to use an iPad or a laptop or something. So we eventually graduated into having, you know, because he couldn't, you know, do a worksheet. I mean, he could maybe circle something, but to physically fill out a worksheet, you know, answer questions or anything like that. So his teachers, pretty much go through like 3rd grade up till middle school, they would scan all his documents, or not his documents, all his like worksheets and classwork that they were doing that was would be a paper pencil task, and they would scan it into a file on his laptop that we ended up getting for him through school. And they found a program that they would import all his worksheets and stuff like that. So all you would have to do is click on a specific spot on the worksheet, and it would be highlighted, and he could type in the answer or whatnot. So that we kind of started that at an early process, and then we kind of graduated away from scanning in things, and we went to a speech to text. So he does all of that now. So he does it with a headset, and it's another program that he uses to speak into, and that's how he types his papers. He does almost all of his classwork. He started that in high school. He started using an iPad in high school and kind of transitioned, you know, into that phase, and doing everything with different apps and whatnot on an iPad for all of his schoolwork. So I think that just kind of really thinking ahead, you know, what is it today that, you know, they're going to need to be successful as an adult is really, 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 really important. And I, you know, with Connor, I always try to let him figure it out first, and then ask, you know, give yourself some time to process it. Think out of the box. You know, how would you think if I wasn't here in this scenario or situation? You had nobody around to help you. How would you get that task or whatever it is you needed for yourself done? And, you know, if figure out what is it that you can do on your own, then what maybe you need, you know, some assistance with. So just, you know, I think having him being able to try to, it's really hard for a parent, I guess, is to truly not help them. You know, it's as a parent, you gotta really just say, I gotta back off. You know, you gotta get over the concept that, oh, they're not gonna do it right, or they're gonna struggle. Or, well, sometimes the only way we learn things is through struggling. And, you know, Connor can admit to that till this day, that that was huge for him to try to be able to learn all those skills on his own, and how far it's advanced him where he's at now in college, just by incorporating technology into his school routine and just in life in general. So that's been, you know, really beneficial, I guess. And I say that to all parents, you know, it's just, don't, you know, really take a glance at what it is they're learning at that point in time, you know, as far as what the skills are in their IEP, just because, you know, you got to think ahead. Just think ahead and plan for that, because you want them, the whole point of all of it is to make sure that they're successful when they become an adult.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We are out of time. I know there's some more questions in the chat about the Ability Center services. So we Just really quickly, in the youth department, we have life skills classes that are broken up by age and level of assistance needed. And that process to participate in our youth program all starts with an intake process. So by calling the Ability Center, and we just sit down with families and learn more about you so that we can learn about your child and how we can best come alongside you and support you. So for those of you that are kind of asking more specific questions about our services, I would just encourage you to give us a call so that we can help you all out. But thank you. Angie and I are moms as well. So Lindsay and Wendy and Heather, we appreciate you taking the time out to share your experiences, and especially right now during the busy back to school season. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks for inviting me.
Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.